What happens when 31 of the world's most advanced armies, trained, equipped, and built in partnership with America, turn and attack it? Picture it. The year is 2025. Allies become enemies overnight. Bases once shared, technologies once trusted, strategies once coordinated, all flip into tools pointed at the United States. This isn't a border skirmish or a sudden coup. It's a calculated, collective decision by dozens of nations to cut the heart out of a superpower. The unthinkable has happened, and everything that held the old order together, trust, networks, logistics, now looks dangerously fragile. What comes next will decide whether that fragility breaks or holds. In a seismic geopolitical shift, the United States formally exits NATO. One sentence, irreversible in effect. Allies who built their militaries shoulder to shoulder with American power suddenly find the plug pulled. The treaties remain on paper, but the real wiring, satellite feeds, shared targeting, the global logistics web that organizes modern war, goes dark. Units trained to fight in lockstep lose the central clock. Command channels, real-time intelligence streams, guaranteed resupply, everything that once knitted 31 armies into a single fighting organism instantly becomes a gap. In weeks, the alliance is not just politically weakened, it is technologically amputated, forced to improvise in a system it never fully owned. Almost overnight, Europe's digital scaffolding goes dark. Satellites stop sharing secrets, GPS dots jitter and vanish. Supply chains that once flowed like clockwork grind to a halt. Ports can't call in reinforcements, air corridors go unlit, and tank convoys lose the invisible map they've used for years. Command centers scramble with half answers and worse, old assumptions that relied on American sensors and networks collapse in real time. Hospitals, logistics hubs, and frontline units find themselves cut off, not by geography, but by code. They're not just surprised, they're technologically blind and suddenly dangerously alone. They call it Operation Iron Reprisal, a name born from fury and fear. And in a single, stunned vote, 31 nations cross an impossible line. Shock gives way to resolve. Cabinet doors lock, war rooms light up. Fleets are ordered, air wings scrubbed into readiness, and special ops teams stand by with bated breath. This is no symbolic patrol. It is a full-scale, coordinated strike plan crafted in weeks that would usually take years. A desperate, audacious gamble to punish what Europe sees as betrayal and to force a reckoning with the power that once kept them safe. The world holds its breath. This isn't about conquest. It's a cold, clinical plan. A swift, surgical decapitation strike aimed not at territory, but at command. Sever Washington's ability to see, talk, and move. To disarm the coastal defenses and force a humbled America back to the negotiating table before the global order fractures. They want paralysis, not occupation. Cripple the fleet, blind the satellites, cut the logistics so catastrophe becomes leverage. It's brutal in its logic and terrifying in its clarity. But the plan that looks perfect on paper has a brutal Achilles heel. To reach a sovereign continent, they must first cross 3,000 miles of open ocean. The challenge is immense. 3,000 miles of open ocean standing between ambition and arrival. Entire naval groups push out of European ports. Carriers, destroyers, transports, steaming west under strict radio silence. The quiet is a tactic, but it's also a risk. Without the American nervous system that once knit their movements together, every convoy becomes vulnerable, timing frays, and luck starts to feel like a weapon. Cut off from America's hardened networks, the coalition finds itself stumbling on the most basic tools of navigation and awareness. Forced to lean on Europe's Galileo, slower, less precise, far easier to spoof, their formations drift out of sync, timing windows close. Intelligence reads are a dangerous collage, patchwork satellite snapshots, hurried human reports, incompatible sensor feeds. Missions that relied on split-second coordination start to fray. Convoys miss rendezvous. Strike packages arrive late or not at all. In short, the technological edge they once borrowed is gone, and every mistake now risks turning an audacious plan into chaos as the Armada pushes north. Staging from forward bases in Greenland, Iceland, and Canada, 30-odd task groups slip their moorings and fan out into the North Atlantic. A steel tide of destroyers, transports, and carriers pushes south beneath a paper-thin cloak of stealth and radio silence. They move fast, coordinated on a fragile patchwork of systems, not toward conquest, but toward a single, surgical objective: America's East Coast. As the fleet coalesces, the coalition's plan hardens into a brutal geometry, a three-pronged invasion aimed straight at America's vulnerable East Coast. One arm will split U.S. defenses, another will smash local garrisons, and the third will race to secure a deep-water port, the only lifeline for the thousands of tanks and troops waiting offshore. It's surgical on paper, dangerous in practice. Before sunrise, it begins. The East Coast sky explodes into light, coordinated missiles screaming toward military bases, communications hubs, and airfields. Lights die in command centers. Runways crater. The aim is simple: sow panic, cripple any coordinated response, and buy time for the invasion. And while the coastline burns, airborne forces are already falling inland. At the same moment, under a bruised pre-dawn sky, Europe's elite go airborne. Silhouettes spilling from C-130s, halo teams slicing through cold air, dropping deep into the American interior and hammering a missile silo in North Dakota. It's not about territory, it's a statement. Strike the strategic heart and you shake the whole fortress. Radios in farm towns crackle with alarm. Washington's nerve centers flare to life. The raid is daring, surgical, and symbolic, meant to cut America's throat of deterrence before the main invasion can even land. Under a steel sky, the European Armada closes on Norfolk. Warships fan out, engines muffled, radio silence draped over decks. Their orders are surgical: crater the docks, turn piers into rubble, stop every U.S. ship before it sails. If they can open a seaward corridor for transports and armor, the invasion can pour ashore. Everything hinges on those first minutes. The first hours look like proof the plan worked. Fireballs bloom along beaches and piers, a bloody sunrise painting the skyline. Cell towers die, command nets fall silent. Coastal towns go dark and terrified. From high above, NATO paratroopers spill into the dawn, stealthy, confident, gliding toward streets they expect to be empty, toward the panic they believe is already here. They expected chaos. They expected panic. Instead, the sleeping giant woke with cold, systematic fury. Not a ragged scramble, but a perfectly rehearsed continental-scale symphony of violence. Coast-to-coast nodes lit up like a countdown. Missile batteries aligning, carriers shuddering into action, silent submarines finding their lanes, airborne units folding into pre-planned corridors. Every sensor, rail line, and staging area moved as if on a single, unblinking cue. It was the kind of response that only comes from decades of preparation, swift, clinical, and mercilessly efficient. The invaders had struck first. What they hadn't counted on was how quickly the whole machine would answer. They've landed the first punch. Missiles, chaos, paratroopers falling from the dark. And for a few breathless minutes, it looks like history is being rewritten. But the hit wasn't the finish. It was the opening chord of something larger. Radios that should have been dead whisper back to life. Trains that should have been stalled roll steel toward the shore. Hidden batteries swivel. A submarine slips into the night. The invaders expected confusion. They expected to cut the nervous system and walk through the wound. Instead, they're racing against a machine they thought they'd broken, a distributed, practiced, brutal response. Will their borrowed tech keep them alive, or have they underestimated the system they once leaned on? Then everything flips. Along the coast, rows of Patriot batteries wake up like a steel heartbeat. Radar sweeps, launch tubes open, missiles scream skyward. One by one, they ladder up and shred incoming warheads, turning explosions into harmless fireworks over the water. The shock and awe fizzles. What was meant to paralyze the homeland becomes a controlled, lethal countermeasure before it can do catastrophic damage. Offshore, Aegis destroyers wake up as one. Their radars sweep the dark sea. Data pulses between ships, a single humming network. Contact brackets the lead NATO vessels. Fire control solutions lock. Vertical launch cells arm. Tomahawks and missiles find angles. Targeting brackets bloom across screens with chilling efficiency. By the time the first carrier commanders realize it, the Navy already has firing solutions. Then the sky answers. Out of nowhere, F-22 Raptors slice across the dawn, a flash of black and gray, sudden, precise, lethal. Paratroopers are ripped from their descent. Transport planes are chased, crippled, gone. Within minutes, the invaders' air advantage is vaporized, and with the sky sealed, the stage is set for the 82nd to move, fast, organized, unstoppable. Within hours of the first blast, the 82nd Airborne is on the move, boots on tarmac, Humvees roaring, jumpmasters barking orders. They seize choke points, lock down bridges and junctions around Norfolk, sever supply routes, and secure airfields and railheads before NATO can consolidate. Quick patrols fan out, sweeping for infiltrators, while combat engineers set demolition and denial zones. By the time the first transports stagger toward shore, there's nowhere safe to land. This isn't panic, it's a process. Under the smoke and radio silence, a lone U.S. submarine slips through the chaos like a ghost. Silent, patient, precise. It finds a firing solution, then releases one torpedo. Fast, clinical, unstoppable. That single decisive shot is meant to strip the invasion of momentum, to turn an armada into a crippled idea. One torpedo finds a French transport ship, packed with hundreds of soldiers and the gear of an invasion, and it disappears in a single, monstrous implosion. Steel groans, a plume of black smoke, then the hungry sea. News races through the armada, confidence unravels. Men count losses where they had counted victory. The invasion is bleeding people and morale before it has even truly begun. Now the homeland itself becomes a weapon. From forested ridges and backroads, mobile GPS-guided rocket batteries, camouflaged on flatbeds, folded into farm fields, slide into firing positions. They wake, lock, and pour steel onto the approaching landing craft with surgical timing. Salvos bracket the beaches, engines and decks shudder, ramps collapse. The invasion fleet finds itself shot to pieces not by a single ship, but by a continent's hidden, coordinated heartbeat. Apaches scream low over the marsh, slamming into the surf with gunners trained on every dark hull. Small landing craft burn, twist, and sink as crews bail into cold water. Far inland, B-1s throttle up and launch long-range anti-ship missiles. Streaks of fire arc across the morning and slam into the convoy, sending columns of smoke and steel into the sky. The naval formation fractures. Supply lines snap. Soldiers are stranded on decks gone black. Amid the wreckage and the furious, methodical American counterstrike, Europe's commanders grow desperate and reach for one last invisible weapon, a continent-shuddering cyber attack. This is NATO's last desperate card, a coordinated cyber onslaught designed to blind the American machine from the inside out. Lines of code become missiles, grid substations overloaded, towers whispering static, control rooms flashing red. GPS feeds are spoofed, phone networks stutter, air traffic radars wobble. Command centers find their maps suddenly meaningless. In barracks and bunkers, operators watch as the digital glue that binds an entire defense starts to peel away. And for a heartbeat, the invaders' gamble looks like it might just tear the country's nerve center in two. For a moment, it works. Power grids stutter and drop into the dark. GPS dots jitter and leap off course. Phones go dead. Screens fill with static. Streets fall quiet in a way that feels unnatural. Then the other truth kicks in. The American system was built for this. Engineers, dozens of them, sleepless and wired, snap open command cabinets, isolate the corrupted nodes, patch out poisoned feeds, and bring hardened backups online. Satellite handoffs, encrypted mesh radios, diesel generators, and analog fallbacks hum to life. Critical links come back one by one. The blackout becomes a doorway the defenders close behind them. Then America hits back, not with a single salvo of steel, but with a cold, surgical wave of code that moves faster than any missile. The U.S. counter-cyber strike slices into obsolete firewalls, exploits factory default routers, and turns benign backbones into cascading failures. Power stations trip offline, satellite uplinks blink out, air traffic and targeting feeds go static. What was once a tangled web of allied systems becomes a blackout map. Logistics computers freeze, encrypted links collapse, and command nets stop answering. In minutes, the picture generals relied on is gone. Instruments dead, voices cut off, and the very brain of the invasion goes dim. Back on the Virginia coastline, the nerve center has gone dark. Command rooms that minutes before hummed with orders now sit in stunned silence. Screens frozen, radios dead, maps with no cursor. Generals stare at static like men watching their own hands disappear. Messages that should have routed down the chain vanish into black circuits. Liaison officers shout into dead lines. Units wait for permission that will never come. The last coordinated option, cyber, comms, the thin thread tying movement to purpose, has been severed. In its place, hesitation, scattered initiative, and an army drifting without a brain. Then the terrain itself joins the fight. The flat, sickly marshlands of the Virginia coast do what maps and commands never could. They become a trap. Channels and causeways funnel rolling columns into single lanes. Tanks pile up. Tracks bog. Every predictable route is pre-registered by American guns. Drones hover overhead. Artillery and anti-armor teams wait like predators, and the invading force finds itself marching into a perfectly laid ambush. American armored divisions loaded onto trains and funneled inland roar out along interior lines. They hit like a single coordinated hammer. Rails deliver speed. Reconnaissance pins the choke points the marsh has carved, and disorganized NATO armor is torn apart in minutes. Survivors scatter. Supplies sit stranded at sea, an exposed lifeline suddenly and painfully fragile. Out at sea, the few surviving NATO supply ships, stalked and hunted by American submarines and long-range strike aircraft, don't stand a chance. Torpedoes punch holes. Missiles light the decks. Transports founder, convoys break apart, and seals of steel close over their holds. Fuel and munitions go down with them. The invasion's logistical lifeline severed mid-ocean, its supply chain dying before it reaches shore. No deepwater port, no lifeline. The ships carrying tanks, fuel, and ammo sit useless, hulks at anchor, while the shore offers nothing a cargo ramp can bite into. Engines cool. Guns go quiet. Soldiers ration hope the way they ration food, by the hour. Submarines and long-range aircraft turn the sea into a trap, while every attempt at a tender, a lighter, a makeshift pier is hunted down and destroyed. With no fuel, no ammunition, and no viable reinforcement or evacuation route, the invasion force becomes a static, exposed target, an army stranded by logistics, not by valor. Then came the final blow. The U.S. flooded the zone with National Guard units, not as reinforcements, but as a living wall. Thousands of soldiers, engineers, and armored vehicles pouring in along interior lines the invaders couldn't reach. They sealed roads and supply routes, set up kill zones and field hospitals, and turned every town and marsh into a defensive node. Cut off from fuel, ammo, and command, the invading divisions unraveled fast. surrender or rout within days. The massive counteroffensive didn't have to be elegant. It had logistics, terrain, and momentum. In less than a week, the beachhead was gone, and the fleet drifted into an empty ocean. It collapses faster than anyone back home can process. Beachheads crumble, sand turned to smoke as armored columns bog down and burn. Air support evaporates into a thin, useless static. Supply convoys are cut to ribbons, and commanders radio into silence. Men who crossed an ocean find themselves stranded on a hostile shore with no fuel, no ammo, and no orders. Morale snaps. Small pockets of resistance fight on, but largely the invasion unravels into scattered surrenders and desperate retreats. The fleet is hunted, the command network shredded, and with that, the bold gamble dies. They lost the fleet, then the nerve, then the war. It wasn't bullets or bravery that won the day, so much as an invisible architecture. Supply lines humming across continents, hardened satellites feeding 1,000 feeds, railheads and theater logistics moving men and fuel faster than anyone expected. It was the mesh of warfighting software, hardened grids, backup comms, and doctrine rehearsed until second nature. Systems the U.S. didn't borrow, it built into its bones. Europe had brought ships and courage, but it had relied on borrowed tools and fragile links. In the end, the invasion collapsed in places no camera could see, in data centers, unencrypted links, in empty harbor cranes, and that collapse forces a terrifying question. The conflict leaves a cold truth. The very ties that knit modern alliances together can become their undoing. Armies built on shared satellites, logistics, and code can be powerful. Until those systems are turned against them or simply cut off, strength becomes fragility. Watching ports burn and networks fall apart, you realize the weapon wasn't only metal and munitions, but an invisible architecture, data streams, supply chains, and trust, whose ownership decides outcomes long before the first shell lands. That paradox turns geopolitics into a question of access and control. Who really holds the keys? Find out what happens next.